Good morning, David.
Good morning.
It's Mark. How you doing?
I'm well.
That's good.
We'll begin the class just right about 12 or 12:01.
Sounds good. Good morning, Rachel. Are you there?
Hey, I'm here.
Hi, Rachel. Good to see you. That's Mark Maynard's our neighborhood. There's Hannah.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just eating.
Well, we still have a few people checking in, and I'll monitor that and give a few welcoming comments, and we'll get going. This is Welcome to Neighboring 101. This is the monthly class where we talk with leaders in the neighboring movement nationwide, and we discover ways for organizations and individuals to use this idea of neighboring as part of asset-based community development and also personal development as well. The slides that have been running, although they get stuck once in a while, are pictures from the recent event in the Springfield area called LAWN. That stands for Lawn Art with Neighbors. You may recall last month we had Shauna Smith online, and she talked to us about lawn and what that was going to involve. I believe we ended up with 55 houses that had lawn sculptures, and thousands and thousands of people viewing those online and going by and viewing them in person, and led to a lot of fun community discussion. And so you may remember that lawn is organized by the Sculpture Walk of Springfield, Springfield Art Museum, Missouri State University Art and Design Department, and Greene County MU Extension, as a way to engage neighbors and neighborhoods in art and in relationship with each other. So fun event. And if we have more data about its impact, we'll share those with you at a later time. But I wanted to share some of those fun images with you today as we get going. So just a couple of words while a few more of these slides scroll through. Our guests today, we have two. Hannah King is with Community Partnership of the Ozarks in Springfield, Missouri, and she'll be presenting here in a little bit on creating, running, and expanding a tool library. The Springfield Tool Library is the only program of its kind in Missouri, and it lends out home repair and gardening tools to Springfield residents and community groups. And so this session, in addition to Hannah's presentation, we'll have a few announcements today, hopefully some time for Q&A toward the end, an installment of our regular advice from my neighborhood, and then also an interview with Susan Bosey. She is a code enforcement liaison in Wichita, Kansas. She connects code violators with volunteers and grants to correct problems ranging from unmowed yards to pest problems, yard waste, leaking roofs, and everything in between. As far as she knows, she's the only person in the country doing this. It began in Wichita 5 years ago with a grant program in one neighborhood and then was expanded citywide. She won't be on live. I'll be sharing a video, but the only way to see that video as part of this class. So I think both of those will be informational and informative today. So glad you're here. And please continue to use chat if you have questions or comments. I'll add some things in there as we go today as well. Glad you're with us. So as far as advice from my neighborhood, I was telling a neighbor recently about a book that I read last year called The Turquoise Table. Some of you may have read that or may recall our discussion about the lady who bought a picnic table and ended up putting it in her front yard, and it ended up becoming sort of the hub for social activity in her neighborhood. Well, this neighbor told me that she had heard about someone in Texas that actually ran a business called Neighbor's Table. And so I looked her up, and it's a fascinating story. This lady, Sarah, quit her job in 2011, moved back to Dallas, Texas, decided to kind of reinvent her life and spent time thinking about what really got her excited. And she said the idea of gathering around a table and celebrating with other people was what really got her excited. And so with some help from her dad, who she talked him into building cedar, sort of farm style, home style tables. These are big tables able to seat 20 people at a time for use outdoors. And they launched this business called Neighbor's Table. They built one for themselves. They set it out under a tree in the backyard. She invited a few neighbors. A year later, she had had 500 different guests around her neighbor's table. And then just a few years later, she's now had in excess of 3,000 people, 3,000 different people from her community sitting around this neighbor's table for a meal and conversation in her backyard. It's a fascinating story. And I shared a video or an interview she did on the Today Show a while back. That is on our Facebook page. If you follow Becoming an Engaged Neighbor, that's our Facebook page, Becoming an Engaged Neighbor. You can find the interview with Sarah on that page. It's a fascinating story. She has a goal of having a neighbor's table in all 50 states. The original goal was by the year of 2020, but then this little thing called COVID happened. So she's hoping that by the end of next year, they'll have a neighbor's table in every state in the union. Fascinating story. Well, enough from me. We have a guest presenter from Springfield, Hannah King. As I mentioned, works with Community Partnership of the Ozarks. And she's going to share with us this idea of creating, running, and expanding a tool library, a fascinating idea. In Missouri, it's unique to Springfield. And Hannah, I think you have controls as a co-host. So I'll hand it over to you. Please take it away. Are you able to unmute?
Yes.
There you go.
All right. Let's see. All right. Can everyone see that? So yeah, first of all, let me get to the beginning of my presentation. How about that? Thank you so much for inviting me to share about the tool library. I've only been in the position I'm at for just under a year now, but this is definitely one of my favorite parts of the position. So like you said, I work as a neighborhood events coordinator at Community Partnership of the Ozarks located in Springfield. And kind of just a basic, very, very basic and brief overview of community partnership. We are one of the bigger nonprofit organizations in our community. We focus on building resilient children, healthy families, and strong neighborhoods through partnerships with different organizations and with the city. And so as a neighborhood event coordinator, I get to work with all of the registered neighborhoods to create events, educational. We have neighborhood cleanups and stuff like that. And then I just have the privilege of also coordinating the tool library. So kind of like a basic understanding of what a tool library is. It's pretty self-explanatory just in the name. It gets its concept from a regular library, like a book library, except instead of books, it's tools. And so this is actually a concept that is used in a lot of different ways. It's like the sharing economy, which is kind of a thing that's gained popularity recently, where you take an underutilized resource that someone owns and you're able to share it with others and get more out of that resource. It's a really great way of building community. So it's obviously been applied in ways to your car, to your house. So like Uber, Lyft, and Airbnb, but it's also been gaining traction with your tools. So there's like a lot of really great benefits, especially when it comes to building community and being a good neighbor. The ones that we kind of focus on community partnership is the affordability, accessibility, sustainability, and community aspects of it. So with the affordability, equipping just a basic home toolkit is a really pricey endeavor. It can be up to $250, and that's just with the things that you use on a regular basis. That doesn't include things you might need for special projects or those tools that you want to, that you would never really be able to afford on your own. So it's just, yeah, it gets pricey, and it doesn't include maintenance either. So then the accessibility aspect kind of ties in with affordability. If you aren't able to afford the tools you need, then that access isn't there for you. But there's also just some tools that require a level of knowledge, a level of, yeah, just like you won't be able to have those tools actually in your garage because they might be a little bigger, stuff like that. And so having a tool library with more space and more knowledge base is really helpful for people. Then a big aspect for global tool libraries I've noticed is also the sustainability aspect. They kind of, I've heard it thrown around that whenever you buy a drill for yourself or you own a drill, it's not actually a drill that you need. It's just a hole in the wall. And so they kind of play around with the fact that all of these things that we own are underutilized resources. We put all of these resources into creating these products for each and every person to own. And that's a lot of wasted energy and resources when it's just sitting in your garage gathering dust when you're not using it. So there's definitely this aspect of sustainability that it keeps our resources going for much longer than we would have otherwise. And then one of my favorite parts is the community side of it. It brings together all of these different people who are passionate about creating and building and maintaining. And there are people who know a lot, who can come in and help others who are just trying things out for the first time. We have volunteers with an abundance of time who are able to just be there and support their neighbors as they're accomplishing things in the community and making their house somewhere that they are happy to live in. So that's just really cool to see everyone coming together, being excited about what they're doing in their neighborhoods. So then we have just a lovely picture of one of our tool library members who just joined recently and was so excited. She might have actually done a dance. I'm not sure, but anyway, so we've got a lot of really fun members. But I guess like kind of going back to, because that's like a general idea of the tool library, but specifically in Springfield, we at CPO inherited the tool library, which is kind of cool. We got it from the Urban Neighborhoods Alliance, which is a group that no longer exists. But whenever they had the tool library, they created it alongside the Springfield Community Land Trust, which is a way to get affordable home ownership, like affordable homes for people. And so they noticed that alongside the need for affordable home ownership is also affordable home maintenance. So that's kind of how the tool library came into existence. Once that organization no longer was operational, they passed it along to Community Partnership of the Ozarks, and we took it from there. And it started out as just paper and pen and just the members of the community that were, just word of mouth basically. But it's grown so much over the years. And now we have over 280 tools. We have 64 users. They were able to hire me as a part-time coordinator. And then we've also had several volunteers join up and just within the last year. But right now we're operating where it's $20 for an annual membership. And then you can check out 5 tools at a time to 1 week at a time, with renewals are option or like available if that tool is not in high demand. But it's grown a lot over the past several years, and it's just been really exciting to see that happen. So if you, I have pictures. Here's some before and after pictures, because I like showing off what all of our members are doing. So we have this one with an impact driver. Someone put up an exercise center in their basement and had to, have a specialty tool to be able to drill into brick. So that was really helpful for that. And then someone did an entire renovation of their kitchen. So we had a finish nailer on there. And then tillers have been the most popular tool probably in the last couple of months. But yeah, it's been awesome to see them get all of that accomplished. But if I haven't sold you on, I hope I've sold you on the tool library, because I think it's amazing. But if you were
I'm sold.
Yeah, if you're wanting to start, I haven't personally been there for that process of starting the tool library, but there are a ton of resources online that I've kind of gathered. But the basics of it is you want to find a group that is on the same page, that is excited about this concept of sharing tools and growing their community in this way. And that can be from a church, a school, a homeowners association, or like your friends and neighbors, just like people who you live around is a perfect place to start. And you just get together. It's helpful to have different expertise like marketing and volunteer management and financial and all of that, but it's not necessary. I don't have the knowledge of tools, but I have volunteers who help me figure out all of that stuff. So you kind of learn as you go, but you start with the concept of like what tools you're wanting to add to the library, and you can like survey the community that you're wanting to serve in that area, just like see what they're interested in. And you can get those tools from local businesses or from garage sales or donations from members in your community. Another important aspect to consider is the facility that it's going to be under. With community partnership, we kind of lucked out because we had that extra capacity. But there are different ways to do that by partnering with businesses or even running it from a single member in your community's garage if they have a good sized garage. Things like that. There's also an option of making this a 501c3 or trying to do it as an actual business. So you want to consider that. Funding ideas, a lot of them are by membership, but some find grants and there's a whole bunch of different funding options, business partnerships, late fees kind of go into that funding as well. And as a tool library grows, it is really helpful to have the concept of adding staffing and having a part-time or a full-time coordinator to help with the volunteers. But there are ones that operate fully as volunteers, which is awesome. Yeah. So just there's a lot of different details that go into it, but it's really fun to work through them because you can make it work in so many ways, which I think is a unique thing. Yeah, basically more details to work out, but I know that these are all things that I feel like I'm running short on time, so I'm going to kind of try to rush through it, but yeah.
You are fine on time. You are fine on time. We'll keep going as long because people are already typing questions in the chat box. So there's obvious interest in this.
Excellent.
So don't feel like you're on a time limit today.
Very cool. Okay. I felt like I was talking too much, but so yeah, you also want to consider the number of tools. So it's kind of a balance that you have to draw of like, obviously you want to have accessibility to a lot of different tools. So you want to focus on buying the ones that are going to be the most used in your community. In general, it's easy to collect a lot of tools that people don't want. So you kind of have to be mindful of that. Getting tools that are higher, especially higher concentration of use, like a tiller or a power washer or a mower, that's really helpful. Having a bunch of the same tool that isn't used very often all at once is not that helpful. I've learned. So yeah, you'll think through that. Loan length. We do a week, but we've even considered changing that around, and those tools that are more popular doing it just 3 days so that individuals are able to check it out more frequently. You'll also want to consider waiver and liability. Yeah, those are the parts of the job that I don't like thinking about, because I don't like the thought of people hurting themselves with tools, but it is a very real fact.
Anna, do you have people, do they actually sign a waiver of some sort, or
yeah, they do.
You have insurance that covers this?
We do. We have insurance that covers it. we get that policy through community partnerships. Like it's a separate policy itself, but it's all coordinated through community partnership in their normal insurance process. But ours is based off of the number of tools that we have, and it is for any like damage that happens to those tools. And we also have a release of claim that people sign anytime they sign up as a member. And then we also, yeah, we have like photo release claim or waivers and stuff like that too, kind of more basic. But yeah, that's a big topic that comes up within the tool library communities. There's actually a group that I'll talk about a little bit later, but they talk about some of those things that it's like, yeah, it's a little harder to figure out because a tool library is so unique in what it is. So yeah. And then, and like I said, like gathering tools, one of the easiest ways to do that is through business partnerships, or through partnerships with like neighborhood association, or any type of organization that works with tools. We've even communicated a little bit with our community gardens, and we haven't necessarily gotten tools from them, but we have gotten a lot of memberships from them because they're all interested in gardening and all of that. So then you'll want a way to inventory that all of your tools and have a process for checking those in and out. The most popular way to do so has been the My Turn software, and it's actually really user friendly. And so I would highly encourage you to look into that if you're thinking of starting one. And then, yeah, obviously, once you have all of these things figured out, it's just so fun to be able to spread the word, because I have not met a single person who hasn't been excited about that they can check out tools for $20 a year for up to a week. It's a really, really awesome resource that people are excited about. So,
Hannah, on the My Turn software, is that a free software, or is it does it have a cost to it? Is it web-based, I guess?
Yeah, it does have a cost to it. As a nonprofit, they waived that cost for us. So I think that's a conversation that they're willing to have if you are registered as a 501c3 or with a nonprofit. I don't know actually what the price would be if you didn't have that. But it seems like it would be fairly affordable because they have a big group of tool library users. Like that's one of the primary focuses of that platform. So and yeah, that's pretty much all I have on that. Like I said, the resources that I've found the most helpful so far have been the My Turn lending platform. They're really responsive in answering, getting feedback to you, or when you give them feedback, getting back to you and applying things is really cool. And then the tool library forum is a tool library Google group, which you can join. I actually can't remember how I came across it, but it's been the coolest thing because there's like hundreds of tool libraries across the nation and even more internationally. And so there are a lot of ones that have been here for years and years and who know what they're doing, but there's also new ones who are going through it at the same time. So you kind of get that fresh perspective of like what's changed since that last tool library was established, what's different, and how are people adjusting to different challenges with this type of tool library. Yeah, so it's been really cool. And then there's me, and I'm like learning a lot, so I'd be happy to figure some things out with you if you ever we're starting a tool library and wanted to know.
Well, great intro overview. You have several questions in chat. I'll just shoot some of those at you, Hannah, and see if
Sweet.
how you want to tackle some of these. How do you handle making sure tools are returned and not damaged?
Yeah, so the tool library, like the way that we handle those right now is that if it's actually a work in progress for us. There are things that we're trying to implement a little bit better in getting tools to be returned on time. And it's kind of a delicate balance with wanting to make things accessible for people. But we do have a fee that if people return things that are broken, or if they are not clean, then, well, especially if they're not clean, they either have the option of cleaning it right there or doing like a $10 fee and then the volunteer will clean it. We don't have late fees in place. However, we are thinking about and trying to figure out how to implement those. The thing that we run into for us personally is being able to actually charge people. We don't have access to their credit cards, and we don't plan on having access to the credit card information to charge someone if they don't bring back a tool. But it is something, there are options out there if that's something you're wanting to look into. And there's a lot of resources on the Google group on that as well. But I also have found just being kind and being persistent in talking to people and making sure that you're not just like, bring back our tools, we need them right now, but like trying to understand and work with them. Even having people, volunteers who are able to pick up tools has been helpful, because sometimes it's just transporting a tool is really difficult for a community member. And so, yeah, it was a long answer.
Well, here's a question from individual with Habitat for Humanity in Albany, New York. And she's asking, how do you control access to the tool library? Is the keypad or some sort of shared entry system?
We have a padlock on our tool shed, and then people are only allowed to check out tools by appointment or during our office hours when there is a volunteer or a staff member available to do so.
All right. Would you say that you have a majority success rate with tools as opposed to damaged or non-returned tools?
Oh yeah, it's most of the time we have really good responsible members, and it's an exception to the rule that we have anything damaged or missing. And almost the worst case scenario is usually that people turn in tools late, and that usually just requires a couple reminders. So once we implement late fees, I have a feeling that is going to get better. So that's a work in progress for us. We're still learning. I'm still learning. So
Well, and then what do you find to be the most popular tool items? You mentioned a few that sound maybe seasonal, popular now, but are there some others that overall are most popular?
yeah, I found that definitely the tillers, like I said. Also last year in the fall, pressure washers were very popular. Mowers and trimmers as well. And then we also, I feel like gardening tools that you would need for a larger project. For instance, if you were getting a group of kids together to learn how to garden, like shovels and basic gardening tools have been pretty popular too. So,
how many of these popular items do you have available then?
we have 2 electric tillers and 1 gas tiller, and we have 1 electric power washer and 1 gas power washer, and then several that were in maintenance that never made it back because rest in peace. Sometimes gas powered tools are a little finicky, but yeah, so yeah, 3 to 4 of each of them has been what has worked.
All right. Well, here's another interesting question. Do you have any sort of insights on the demographics of these tool renters? Are these typically older versus younger? Are they owners, renters, ethnic backgrounds? Right? Is there a commonality in any of this, or any insight you have there?
Yeah, it's honestly, it's a pretty even mix as far as I can tell. Um, it's actually, yeah, pretty much evenly between female and male. We have several younger people who come in, but then I think we had someone who's like close to 80 come in and and look at our tools, so that was really cool. So it's been a pretty solid mix of people, but I think it definitely depends on where you're located at, and who you're able to get the word out to.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions. You got peppered with quite a few there, uh, Hannah, from people kind of all over. And someone is asking about ways. What ways do you advertise? And I think I saw you mention that you had some print media coverage, but use social media and some other tools as well to get the word out.
Yeah, and we're able to piggyback a lot on the media that we use for community partnership in general. One of the things we do is we attach a little blurb on our postcards that we send out for the neighborhood cleanups. So then it gets out to every single neighborhood. That's been really helpful. One of our volunteers also gives out business cards pretty much everywhere that he goes. So yeah, there's definitely ways to get the word out, and usually it just has to do with wherever you are or wherever you know people gather that would be interested in that. Just always be willing to have a conversation about the tool library. Having a little business card on hand is also helpful.
Yeah. And from Washington State here, actually, another question. How do you handle training people to use a specific tool like a tiller?
Yeah, so that whenever it's just me, it's sending them all of the resources that would come with that specific tool. But I also have some really awesome volunteers who have used pretty much all of the tools, know how they run, know why they might not be running, who can kind of go over ways to use the tools, things to avoid. And we're working on we'd like to start working on getting those conversations that they have with every member when they check out the tool, just have one video and be able to send it to everyone. I think that's like a resource that a lot of tool libraries offer that would be helpful.
Well, obviously, it's a idea that attracts a lot of interest. You've had a lot of questions here from all over today. You're doing a great job of fun work and meeting a need there in Springfield. And just when we first met and I heard about it, I thought that was such a clever and useful idea. And your energy and enthusiasm about it is contagious. Appreciate that. And appreciate you taking some time today to share with this group as well.
Yeah, of course. I'm so happy to hear everyone and all of their questions and interest.
Well, and you've given your contact information too. So if people should want to email you or follow up, you certainly can. That's an option.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll stop the share screen on this one at least. And so just a couple of additional items, and then we'll go into our video. The video interview with Susan will take us past that 1 o'clock hour. So I know some people will need to bow out at that time, and you're welcome to do that. It'll be recorded and it'll be sent out in the email that follows this class for all participants to be able to access and see the interview with Susan. Just two announcements before we go into the video then. Remember the Becoming an Engaged Neighbor page on Facebook. It's a good resource to be able to follow some of these stories and see additional videos like the one about Neighbor's Table. And then also next month, we always like to talk about what's coming ahead. Next month, our special guest is going to be Tim DeTillis. Tim is actually the owner of the National Good Neighbor Day URL. Even though it's a national government holiday, he beat the government to the punch, and he owns the URL. And you may have heard Tim before. He has a TED Talk about National Good Neighbor Day. He's going to be our guest, along with a couple other people who are working on National Good Neighbor Day projects. And we'll talk a little bit about what we're planning in Greene County for September 28th for National Good Neighbor Day as well. So I'll go ahead and begin our video with Susan. I'll try and watch chat as well. Should you have other questions, I'll weigh in on those. Thank you again for being with us today. This is always a favorite part of my entire month. Whoops, I didn't share that correctly. Here we go. Share sound. Well, we have a special guest today from Wichita, Kansas. How about that? Suzanne is the Code Enforcement Liaison, I believe is the correct title.
Yes.
They're in Wichita working with the city and connecting volunteers with individuals that have code violations and needs on their home and land. You don't need to hear me talk about this exciting and really very unique project. So, Suzanne, welcome aboard. Looking forward to learning more.
Oh, I'm excited to talk about my program.
We were visiting earlier about how unique this approach really is, perhaps the only one in the country.
I have not found another program, and I've looked to try and find other communities to network with, and I have not found anything that really kind of matches what we do.
Well, kind of lay out for us then what it is that you do.
Okay, first of all, I kind of want to go back on the creation of this program and the evolution of it over. I've been in this program for about a little over 5 years, and it has evolved quite a bit in that time period. Before I was hired, there was some additional grant funds through the Housing and Community Services Department of the City of Wichita, and they had gone to our code enforcement office and said, we would like to fund another inspector, a code enforcement inspector. My supervisor at the time said, that's not really what I want. I want someone who can kind of assist residents with accessing resources to resolve their violations. Prior to my beginning of this program, basically these cases, we would start a case on them. They would have a certain amount of time to resolve the violations. If they were not resolved in a timely manner, then these were escalated to the court system. But when you have individuals that could not afford to make repairs on their homes, or maybe were elderly or had health issues that made it difficult for them to get out and clean up their yards and that sort of thing, we were just adding an additional stressor to this. We would take them to court. They may have to lose pay for not going to work. It could cause problems. Employers don't always like it when you say, I can't come to work, I have to go to court. That can cause problems there. Transportation to get there. And then ultimately, there would be fines assessed. And in many of these cases, the violations were still not resolved because they still did not have the ability to resolve those. And so my supervisor said, I want a social worker, someone with that kind of experience who can come in and work with these families. We had several grant programs available. We knew that there were volunteers out there that would be willing, churches, organizations who would probably be willing to help with some of this. but we just needed someone to focus on helping them access those resources and finding those resources. And so I was brought on. They convinced this grant program that this was what we wanted for this particular position. After 2 years, I was removed from the grant and put on the regular budget because the city had recognized that these services were valuable. We were resolving code violations sooner with less expense to the homeowner and the resident. And it also evolved. Under the grant, I could only work in a very limited part of Wichita based on income and that sort of thing. It eventually, over time, revolved to the entire county. Most work is done within the city of Wichita, but we are located in Sedgwick County, and now I can provide some services to all of Sedgwick County. In this process, after I came on, no one had ever done this before. So my boss was kind of, this is kind of the vision for this program, go. And perfect for me. Because I had lots of ideas and I never really had the power. I'd worked in social services a long time, worked in a lot of different positions within. I worked in mental health, domestic violence, juvenile offenders, but this was a program where I could just go and kind of find resources and see what we can do for these individuals. And so I started in a limited space of Wichita and now revolved into an entire county that I assist. And last year was a little slower because of COVID-19, but the year before I assisted 691 families. And so there was definitely a need for this program. Within this program, some things, when I first started, I worked with Sedgwick County Environmental Resources, and they were able to add some money to help me into their budget to help me purchase dumpsters, to get dumpsters, to rent dumpsters for individual projects. For a lot of people, this required that to get their project completely resolved was a roll-off dumpster, but those can be expensive. And if you're working with someone with limited income, that's huge. That's huge. And so I'm able to provide dumpsters for programs or for projects, for individuals and for my volunteer groups. We later added free dump vouchers for smaller projects for individuals who had a truck, trailer, some way to get to our local transfer station, and that would allow them to dump a load for free. And in some cases, this was a better way to go because they had less than a dumpster full and they had a way to get it there. It also put a little bit more of the responsibility on them to make sure it got there. And so that also was added over time. When I first started, they had a resource guide that they gave to individuals. It had the various grant programs on there that individuals could call for assistance with home repairs, but they didn't always understand eligibility. And they also found it difficult to make these phone calls. These were people that were in crisis. And phone calls are difficult for people when they're in crisis. Reaching out is difficult if there's, some pride involved, that sort of thing. And they really didn't always know how to fill out the applications and work through those systems. And so this became an important part of my position. I assisted people with determining which programs they might be eligible for. And I also helped them with that application process. Most of the applications, they could send them directly to the programs or they could send them through me. There was an advantage to sending them through me because it was easier to advocate for them with getting them more time, whether that was with their individual inspector, if it hadn't gone to the court process yet, or if it was in the court system when I'm trying to advocate for continuance in court or a lower fine, that sort of thing. If we had something in place, we were just waiting for the grant program to be able to assist them. That was helpful if I was kind of involved in that process. I could say definitively that this particular application was submitted on this date, it went to this particular program, that sort of thing. So that became an important part too, in order for me to provide that advocacy, was to be involved in that. And it was never required. Individuals could go directly to the programs, but many chose to go that route, just so that they had that additional layer of support. And so I assisted with that. And I have, over the 5 years, I've assisted with helping them identifying which grants they might be eligible for, helping them work through barriers to approval. For example, at one point, someone would qualify for all the grant programs, except they were behind on their property taxes. They had had some medical issues that had happened within that family. All their money was going towards that, and they were behind on their property taxes. I worked through a program with Salvation Army that helped get those taxes caught up and made them eligible for the program. So there was a lot of that on the side too, is working with some of our local agencies to provide financial support. I also got some churches on board with providing some limited financial support for individuals who had violations, because it's required to have trash service. It's required to have your electricity and gas on. If those were turned off because of poverty issues or crisis, these churches can step in and help get those utilities back on. And so that violation could be resolved that way as well. And found that they were more likely to prioritize those utility bills once they actually got back on, and they realized that they could get code violations for those, than if you were just trying to get them, to find a way to pay those in advance. And so that has been a real important part too, is finding those financial resources. I've had emergency air conditioning repairs that needed done in the middle of summer. It's 99 degrees out, and there's a $300 repair that needs done, and they do not have the money for it. I've worked with some local HVAC companies to provide lower cost repairs, and also would send out an emergency notice to my volunteers. I need some financial support, $300 for this family that doesn't have, their air conditioning went out and it's 99 degrees out. And I have instant response often to those. And so there was a lot of ways to connect with my groups. And at the time I've started this, they had one group listed on this volunteer list, other than one group that did painting for 1 week in the summer. I have grown that to about 115 volunteer groups. And at first I did a lot of outreach to get people on board, and now they're coming to me. One organization will tell another one, hey, if your organization would like to volunteer, contact Suzanne, she can get you on board. And so the first 50 or so, I did a lot of outreach, but then it's doubled because of word of mouth. They're coming to me and asking to be added. So it just takes a little bit of work at the beginning, and then now the work is coming to me, the help is coming to me, which is incredible to me. Another thing that was really added that wasn't part of the original program is, first of all, I could only work with individuals with code violations. Now, anybody who contacts me, if they really kind of have a need, and my program is more need-based than income-based, although I look at that, sometimes there's a particular reason why maybe their income doesn't qualify them, but circumstances in their life, health, that sort of thing has qualified them. We still assist them. And now people are calling me proactively. They don't have violations on record, but they come to me knowing that they could get violations, and I can help them, which is really a better time to help people. Also have inspectors more on board now, is saying, why don't you try working with Suzanne first? I'm not going to start a case for X number of days or months. And if you can get it resolved in that time period, we won't even open a case. And so that's even, that's good too, because the inspectors aren't just out there just frantically writing up cases and adding that stress to their lives. They're saying, we've got someone to help you. If you're willing to work with her, we can maybe help you that way. And let's see if that works first before we start a case. And many cases that helps. There are those that are just opposed to help at all. And unfortunately, those have to go through the whole court process. But when we can help people that way, that is a kinder way to help people. And so now I work with a lot of people who have no violations on record, but they would probably have violations if an inspector were to go out and inspect and start a case. And so that has evolved over time where, okay, it's okay to work, because I argued that and said, why aren't we helping people before they get violations? It seems like that is the best time to help them. And so, it evolved that way. A couple of years ago, the city of Wichita sold some Hyatt property. And in that, we have 6 council districts within Wichita. And they gave $1 million to each council district to use as they saw fit for community outreach, to help their community. In one of those districts, they gave code enforcement in general $250,000, but they designated $50,000 specifically for my program. But they wanted a pilot project. They wanted some proactive inspector activity, but they also wanted proactive code enforcement liaison activity as well. And so with that $50,000, I was able to buy lawn care equipment for my volunteer groups to use when they're doing these programs. I was able to provide a few more dumpsters as well with that. And they wanted to see, if we were more proactive in this and if that would make a difference. Well, it did. Our statistics came back. It was, a huge difference. And what that led to was the city kind of prioritizing my program even more. And now I am giving a substantial budget every year to help with these projects. In addition to the equipment and the dumpsters, I was also able to provide materials for repair projects. And now, as long as there's money in that budget and we feel like it's a worthwhile project, I can provide $1,000 per household for materials. So I've been able to get fences replaced, porch repairs, window well at one point. We were able to contribute to a roof project where I had a volunteer roofer. We had some grant assistance, not enough, and I was able to contribute my $1,000 to get that roof done. And so that also, they saw the value of that and were able to add to my program to provide more financial support for that program. And so all these resources have been a huge asset. It's really shown that the city of Wichita does have a heart and that we really do want to care for our citizens. And it's reduced the stress of these individuals going through this process and not sure how to resolve their violations. And they know that if they do end up in the court system, they have an advocate to kind of be there for them and give them that support. I'm in environmental court 3 times a week, as much as possible. With COVID, I didn't go for a while, and I'm just kind of starting to get back into going again. But they know that they have someone that they can call if they're struggling with that. And it has been an amazing program. There's a lot more room for growth. They're looking at adding 2 employees for me, an administrative assistant and another person to kind of do the liaison piece with me, because they've seen that it's growing, there's value in it. I want to do more outreach to more contractors to get them to maybe donate a service a year. Can you donate a year? I had one roofer who did for a while. He'd donate 1 roof a year, but I want to get, more contractors, pest control to help with bed bugs and stuff like that. And I just got to where I ran out of time because I was so busy helping individual, people and overseeing group projects. This also has evolved to where we've also done where I've had larger groups. I've had groups as large as 300 that have done entire neighborhoods. We have another program that handles the big neighborhood cleanups through the neighborhood associations. But I've had some that were just volunteer groups, not the neighborhood associations. And I've had as many as 300 volunteers that took multiple blocks and they helped with specific areas. I've had groups that wanted to do LE projects. And so we've also evolved into providing dumpsters and trash bags, the hand tools, lawnmowers, whatever, to help with those as well. And so this program keeps evolving and changing and growing, but so does the support for the program as they see the difference it makes. And I love my program and excited to talk about it and open to any questions at any time.
Well, I can hear your passion for the project. You'd have to be passionate and busy, because I think last year you said you had 690 or so cases.
Yes.
That's, almost 2 a day.
Absolutely.
You're dealing with. Are the majority of those proactive efforts, you think, or is the majority still dealing with those that have gone to court or that are in that code enforcement?
I really think we're starting to move more. I think it's about 50-50 now, but we are really starting to move more to the proactive side. And part of that is, again, word of mouth, that I help one individual and she tells her neighbor about me and they're calling me, that kind of thing. But also the inspectors are getting more on board with that proactive help, with asking, telling them that if they work with me, they won't start a case. And I really do think it's about, when I first started, they were all code violation cases. And then now it's probably closer to 50-50 on that, which is great.
Well, help me out a little bit here on the code enforcement. Explain, and I'm asking this because of I hear stories from the town I live in and another community that I grew up in and that I help with, and I hear leaders and residents of that town that express their frustration over homes that have, maybe fallen into disrepair. The grass is always tall there. The place looks like a mess. It becomes a constant frustration topic of conversation. And even with code enforcement, it doesn't seem to really resolve the issues in those communities. Is that what you were seeing? And
that is what we were seeing. And in many cases, it was because they didn't have the means to resolve those violations. And in some cases, unfortunately, it's because they have no desire to resolve the violations. And it can be a long process. I mean, we send them a notice. Eventually they go to court, and the court process can take a year or more, and they can still not be in compliance. And we have the city of Wichita for some of those repeat offenders who are constantly coming back, who aren't willing to work with me or aren't really in a position where they should be working with me. We are kind of changing the way we budget our money. We're doing more city abatements in which the city, and sometimes this requires getting an administrative search warrant through a court process from our end. But we go in, we clean up the properties. We can't do this with home repairs, but we can do this with cleanups or towing away inoperable vehicles, that sort of thing. We do the work, they get a bill for it. If they don't pay it in a timely manner, it's assessed to their property taxes. And so we are really starting to move away from the court process for those particular cases. Because we can resolve them faster than if we take them to court again and again and again and again. And it hits them sooner and harder because it goes right on their property taxes. In Kansas, once you're 5 years behind on property taxes, they can legally sell your property at a tax auction. And so there's more of an incentive to pay those fees. And we have a greater chance of getting our money back on those than when we send them to court and we fine them. Because in those situations, because we also take renters to court, we cannot really assess it to the property owner per se. Those just go to a collection agency to try and collect if they're not paid by a tenant. And anybody who is really good at avoiding collection agencies and has no interest in paying that, they're just not going to. So we are really moving for those, we're not everybody, and really anybody we feel we can help through my program. That's where we're going to go first is, let's identify why they're not resolving their violations. If it's a health or a financial issue, then they're going to make the referrals to me. If it's somebody that just doesn't want to comply, they have the ability to comply, they just choose not to, then we're really turning more to those abatements that happen more quickly. But it's not the court process. Resolving code violations can be a very long process, and adding me to the mix does make that go faster.
Yeah, that would seem to speed the process up, and it would seem also to be more likely to actually resolve the issue,
Yes.
which have neighbors upset or whatever. And it sounds like a much better PR for the city.
Absolutely it is. Yes.
Because sometimes you hear people being really, really critical of the city for this type of thing, for code enforcement, and
right,
you're really helping people correct the issue, which makes the neighbors happy as well, I'm sure.
Absolutely. It's also created better relationships even between our inspectors and citizens, because they're out there to enforce the law and to give them those notices. But at the same time, they're talking to them about my program and saying, yeah, we got a complaint on your property. You do have these violations, but we can help you. We might be able to help you. If you contact Suzanne, she might be able to provide you some resources. And that has really helped. I know we had a couple of our landlords that had multiple properties that were always in violation, that were problems. And what we did with them is we went in and we provided them with resources, maybe a dumpster to clean up several properties. Or, we bought one for his own personal home. We paid for some materials to help him replace his own roof. And now, because we decided they were worth investing a little bit in, now they are on my volunteer list, and they're out there they have skills. They're landlords, so they have skills on home repairs. They have resources. We have one that brings equipment. He brings trailers and tractors and whatever we need to make projects go better. And we have been able to turn that around by engaging our landlords even a little bit. We didn't provide them with a lot, just a little bit, to show that, yeah, we want to help you too. We know you have a lot of properties. It's hard to keep track of all of them all the time. Yes, it's their responsibility to do that. But hey, if you work with us, we'll work with you. And now they are some of my best volunteers. Another one of our very low income neighborhoods that has been just lots of chronic problems there, we set it up with them. If you will monitor dumpsters, we have like 5 of them. If you guys will take turns being in charge of dumpsters, I will provide one dumpster a month that you can empty and return at one time each month, because there's so many problems in these neighborhoods. As long as you're willing to take responsibility for the dumpsters, I will provide you. So basically providing 2 dumpsters a month. We will continue to provide that as long as you will continue to monitor and make sure they don't get overfilled. If they do, you have to level them off. And this has been huge too. They are out there taking much more pride in their communities and in their rental properties. The people living there know that, oh, a dumpster's coming this month. And that has also really helped improve those relationships, because those landlords hated us before. They were always getting notices from their tenants, and now they're partnering with us. So
you're part social worker, part volunteer coordinator, part fundraiser, part community developer.
Absolutely.
All those things put together.
I love it. And you just, when I first started, I never envisioned it. I had lots of ideas, but yet, I was so limited when I first started. Okay, you can help people with code violations in this neighborhood. And it was awful, because people would call me that were a block out of that neighborhood. And I had to say, sorry, I can't help you. You're not in the our core area that we are providing services for. And I hated that because even though you have areas that you have more people in poverty in those neighborhoods, poverty is everywhere,
Sure.
and elderly people live everywhere. Health problems hit, everyone, no matter what your, socioeconomic status is. And things can change overnight. People lose their jobs even in the good neighborhood, in the so-called good neighborhoods. So, I was very happy when this kind of extended beyond just this limited
Was
area.
there some of this type of volunteer work taking place in Wichita, maybe under the umbrella of, I don't know, maybe United Way, Day of Caring projects, or other groups? And if there was a little bit of that now, is this kind of all come under one umbrella now, or?
There are still a lot of individual groups that go through United Way, and we want to do a volunteer project. I do have a relationship with United Way, with their volunteer coordinator, and if she feels it's a project that might fall under what I do, she will contact me and say, hey, I have a group who wants to do, a project on such and such a date, this many volunteers. Do you have something for them? And so there's a lot of coordination with them. And yeah, some of what they get is they want to do something inside or some other type of project or a specific business or, the zoo or whatever. But if it's something like what I do, she makes all those referrals to my program. And I'm on their referral list. They contact me if they feel, or give out my phone number for people that are calling, because they also get citizens calling and say, oh, I need help with a new roof. I don't know what to do. And I'm on their list and they send them to me as well. So
That is a great partnership then, a connection. I'm sure you kind of had the same with churches and some businesses and things like that
absolutely.
too. If you're so you've been at this 5 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're dreaming and looking ahead, what's your dreams for 5 years from now?
5 years from now, I would like to, I will have my staff on, I'm hoping on board by then. We were planning on getting that started, and then, COVID-19 hit as we kind of put that on hold. And now we're kind of, so I will have my staff on board, which is going to help a lot. My vision is that we're going to double the number of volunteer groups we have on my list, and I'm going to have more with special skills, more contractors that are willing to donate specific types of projects to the program. That's kind of where I want to go next. I want more time. I think adding staff will free up more time for me for those outreach activities. And my goal is to double the number of volunteer groups. And I'm at 115 now, so we're talking 230 groups. I think with 230 groups, no one will have to be on that list for very long. But some of those people on there need specialized volunteers. They need people that know how to replace siding or put on a roof or, those kinds of projects. So that's my goal, is to really get more of that specialized labor on board for volunteer projects.
Wow. Well, that's a really inspirational, encouraging. It's exciting to see, because I think it's something that a community of any size could grab a hold of as a model, an example.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned early on, when you have a homeowner that has code violations, and then it may not be financially possible to take care of it, or even if they do, it creates other problems, being gone from work and things of that nature. Do you track what happens after you've made some of these corrections, or after you've helped people with their code violations? Do you see some improvements in that home ownership, or do you see has it reduced repeat offenders? Maybe that would be a way that you measure it. What's the long-term prognosis, I guess, for a house that's had a code and they've been helped, kind of what's the long-term prognosis?
Yes, it really does seem to. Now, there are those that come back to my program and they try and come back multiple times. And I kind of have in place, the first time I help completely with open arms, and it's okay, here's what I can do. And when they come back the second time, I still help, but we have a very strong conversation about, okay, what are your goals on how you're not going to get in this position again. This is especially true with like premise violations. If they have a bunch of junk in their yard and then they get their property in that condition again, and I can see if it's tree waste or something like that we don't always have control over. But when they have, refrigerators and bicycles and whatnot in there, we get it cleaned up and then they're right back there again. We have a serious conversation the second time. If it happens the third time, it's kind of 3 strikes and you're out kind of thing. It's like, and I'm still kind about it, but, I have a stronger conversation. This is the third time. There also is a priority list for my resources. I mean, I can help them apply for a grant program again because they might get a roof this time around, but then something else happens. They have electrical issues. In those cases, I get it. They got their roof taken care of, but now they have a completely new violation. Those I'll help again and again as much as I need to until we get that. And grant programs are limited on how much they can help each time. So sometimes they do come back, but if it's for a different violation, that's a completely different story. But if it's the same thing, and they call me, the first time, and I give them a dumpster and maybe even empty and return it, because they have 2 dumpsters full of stuff. Well, then a year later, they call me and want another dumpster for basically the same kind of violations. They can go on my wait list, but they're not in that highest category anymore. And if I were to get, to them on that list, and I got different categories, there's those with the code violations that have never gotten a dumpster before. And, and it goes down from there. If you've gotten 2 before, 3 before, wherever, those at the bottom of my list will probably never, ever get another dumpster, and I explain that to them. When I get that second call, and I'll say, well, I can put you back on the wait list for a dumpster, but you need to know that anybody who has never had one before will always be bumped ahead of you. I may or may not be able to get you one. So I still try and I'll be kind and put them on the list, but I'm very clear with them that, don't know when I can get that for you or if I even can. They can stay on the list for up to 2 years, and then at 2 years, I remove them. Unless there's some extenuating circumstances where I think I should keep them on there. But that's so that they can still feel like they might get help, that they're on a list if we, but so far I haven't really run out of people who haven't got, who haven't received the first one, and so usually once they've received that first one, they're probably not going to get another dumpster because we just get so many new requests.
Yeah.
And I have about 75 people on a wait list right now. So,
well, in between your heavy workload and all these cases you're dealing with, because it does sound like a lot, I would think that you might get an occasional phone call from some other cities or individuals that watch this and are interested in maybe mirroring what you've done or mimicking what Wichita has done. You guys have I don't know if you've ever had that type of inquiry before. Do you have a little packet of information or a website that you point people to kind of further explain what you're doing and maybe help other groups take the same approach?
There's a little bit of information about my program in general. There's not the detail that I've just provided you here. And it's under the Sedgwick County. I think there's also one under city of Wichita.gov. But there's also one under sedgwickcounty.gov. And it's under MABCD, which stands for Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department, MABCD. It's under their specific information, and there's a little bit of information, but part of the reason there's not a lot of information about my program is because it's a program of me. And they're a little afraid to advertise it too much because I already am working with 700 families a year. As we add staff, they may be more willing to advertise it a little bit more. It's just like some of my volunteer groups who want to have the television stations there and such forth. I always tell them, make the focus about your group, because if it went on there and it said, yeah, she provides dumpsters, because I've had people say, oh, I heard you provide dumpsters to just anybody and blah, blah, blah. And, when can I get my free dumpster? And so we have to be a little selective in who we help. And if the word got out there too much, it would probably be more people we'd have to turn away. And I already get 50 plus phone calls a day from people. And, that's part of the problem. And that's part of why we want to add an administrative assistant to my program to take those phone calls and kind of determine what they're calling about, if they would qualify for assistance, that sort of thing. But that's kind of why there's not a lot of public information about my program, just because it would just be too overwhelming at this point.
Yeah, I can see that. That. Well, I'm going to end the record button here, but I just want to publicly say thank you for taking your time to join in today and to share a little bit about your program. What an example for the rest of us and for other communities, and sure appreciate your time in doing that, Suzanne.
Well, you're very welcome, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody about this. I love my program. So, and thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for hanging with us, and thank you to Hannah King for her presentation as well. And hopefully this has been useful information to you. We'll go ahead and close out the class today for those that are still on, unless you need to stay on and ask some questions or have conversation about something that's going on that you want to talk about further. Otherwise, we'll plan to see you next month, and we'll be talking about National Good Neighbor Day. Thank you.